Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here in Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. Well, we're going to hear from Mr. Poilievre today, and we're also going to hear some updates on what's happening in Ukraine and occupied Palestine. But we have a BBC update confronting violence settlers together. And this is about some of the Israeli settlers and Palestinians kind of working together. As we know that after October 7th, that harassment to the Palestinians by Israeli groups has increased, and this is about a group of shepherds just working together. Only a few would talk in the hills, not to be on their guard. A high alert opposite the hills was a Jewish settlement of Ratim, close by Israel's defense forces post there to protect the settlers. Anyone looking down would see a gathering at Ahmed Durad's home. The Palestinian shepherd, the Israeli activists who support him, the foreign journalists with him on camera. Chatting to Ahmed was a 71-year-old Jewish man who regularly occupies the shepherd into the hills. In spite of the violence, harassment, Gil Alexander belongs to the Jordan Valley Activists, a group of Israelis committed to protecting Palestinians. And he says, I feel like a representative of a humanitarian religious Judaism. There are few in Israel today. The fact that he is a devout religious Jew infuriates the settlers who believe the West Bank belongs to the West Bank, the ancient lands of Judea and Samaria, belong to the Jewish people. And the thing is as Gil would say in this, is that the actions of the Zionists are a few, and the majority of people want everyone just to work together. And it's something that we've been saying through our podcast the whole time, that there are two sides of extremists that have brought this whole thing to a bout of who can cause the most destruction, while the average person is left with their homes sitting in the rubble and their livelihoods decimated. So our hopes, our prayers to the Palestinians who just want to live together in peace, along with those Jewish settlers who want the same. The if we actually look at the West Bank, as they say, the lands of Judea and Samaria, that they belong to all of those who are brothers in Abraham. So, so moving forward, we're going to hear more updates from the United Nations about what is happening in the occupied areas of Palestine and Gaza. We're also going to hear from Mr. Poilievre as he speaks about extending tariffs to Chinese products, especially those that are going into electric cars, to protect Canadian jobs. The question is that a sound thing, or is it just rhetoric to try to get him elected? One as MP and two as Prime Minister. So we will get to that also. But first, why don't we go with the United Nations update as they talk about the occupied Palestinian territories, turning to the situation in Gaza for coordination of humanitarian affairs. Says we have partners estimate that at least 60,000 Palestinians may have moved forward western to Khan Ozez in the past 72 hours. This follows yesterday's order by Israel military for residents in parts of the central and eastern Khan Ozez to immediately evacuate on Wednesday. The Israeli military twice ordered people in parts of northern Gaza to evacuate. There's updates from Yemen. In Yemen, the response for an update on the floods in western parts of the country, the Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs report that partners are delivering supplies and assistance to the people in the affected areas. The situation is constantly changing, and the initial reports indicate at least 10,000 families have been impacted Tuesday when heavy rainfall triggered flash flooding. So why don't we move forward and listen to the whole update as given by Florencia Soto Nino.
Okay, well, good afternoon and happy Friday. I have quite a few notes for you today, so please bear with me. So earlier today, Izumi Nakamitsu, the High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, delivered the Secretary General's message to the Nagasaki Peace Memorial. And nearly 80 years have passed since Nagasaki was incinerated by an atomic weapon. But sadly, the memories are still fresh for those that endured this horrific catastrophe, the Secretary General said. Eliminating these weapons is our highest disarmament priority, he said, adding that he worries the lessons of nearly 8 decades ago have not been learned. The Secretary General said next month's Summit of the Future will be a critical opportunity for countries to renew their commitment to multilateralism, sustainable development, and peace, and adopt an actionable and forward-looking pact for the future to that end. Disarmament and a world free of nuclear weapons, he said, must be a central part of these efforts. Now turning to the situation in Gaza, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says the UN and our partners, we and our partners estimate that at least 60,000 Palestinians may have moved towards western Khan Yunis in the past 72 hours. This follows yesterday's order by the Israeli military for residents in parts of central and eastern Khan Yunis to immediately evacuate. On Wednesday, the Israeli military twice ordered people in parts of northern Gaza to evacuate. OCHA says the parts of northern and southern Gaza newly placed under evacuation this week encompass nearly 43 square kilometers. Initial tracking by our partners in Gaza say these areas include some 230 displacement sites, more than 36 water, sanitation, and hygiene facilities, and 5 functional health facilities, including the Indonesian hospital. More than 80% of the Gaza Strip is now assessed as having been placed under evacuation orders since October last year. OCHA says the entry of aid supplies into Gaza remains challenging due to active hostilities, access constraints, high levels of insecurity, the lack of public order and safety, and other factors. As a result, the volume of aid able to be brought from the operational border crossings into Gaza has decreased by more than half since early May, when the Rafah crossing was closed. It has gone from a daily average of 169 trucks in April to fewer than 80 trucks in June and July. At the Kerem Shalom crossing, the decrease was even steeper over the past 3 months, with a more than 80% drop in aid cargo that was brought into Gaza from that border crossing. Meanwhile, humanitarian assistance missions requiring coordination with Israeli authorities continue to be denied and impeded. OCHA reports that as of yesterday, just 24 of the 67 planned aid missions to northern Gaza this month have been facilitated by Israeli authorities. The rest were either denied, impeded, or canceled due to security, logistical, or operational reasons. The same was true for southern Gaza. Out of nearly 100 planned humanitarian missions, about half were facilitated by Israeli authorities, and again, the rest were denied, impeded, or canceled. And in Yemen, you had asked us yesterday for an update on the floods in the western part of the country. Our colleagues from the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs report that we and our partners are delivering supplies and assistance to people in the affected areas. The situation, however, is constantly changing, but initial reports indicate that at least 10,000 families have been impacted since Tuesday, when heavy rainfall triggered flash flooding in several parts of Al-Hadayda, Hajar, Raima, and Al-Mawid governorates, damaging homes, farms, and infrastructure. And this number is highly likely to increase as more information becomes available. Both the World Health Organization and UNICEF have been delivering much-needed medical supplies to local hospitals and health centers, as well as preparing to deploy dozens of mobile health teams. Partners have provided immediate assistance, including food, water, and hygiene kits, to more than 1,600 people in affected areas, with additional resources being mobilized. An estimated 4.8 million will be needed to provide priority support to families, but as with almost all our humanitarian response efforts, underfunding is a major challenge there. And turning to Libya, the UN mission there today expressed its concern at the recent mobilization of forces in various parts of Libya, particularly in the southern and western regions. It commends ongoing efforts to de-escalate the situation and prevent further tension. It also urges all parties to exercise maximum restraint and avoid any provocative military actions that could be perceived as offensive and might jeopardize the country's fragile stability and the safety of its people. The mission calls for continued communication and coordination between forces affiliated to the Libyan National Army and Government of National Unity. And the mission stands ready to facilitate dialogue and provide technical expertise and support. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the head of the International Organization for Migration, Amy Pope, has just concluded a visit there with a call for urgent and concerted action to stem the worsening humanitarian situation in the country's east. Fighting in eastern Congo has displaced over 7 million people from their homes, many of them multiple times. In other areas of the country, including around the capital, Kinshasa, heavy rains and flooding have displaced tens of thousands of more people. Ms. Pope said that we need to bring together efforts across the humanitarian, development, and peace sectors to drive comprehensive, innovative, sustainable solutions, putting affected people at the center. And she also renewed our call on all parties to the conflict to respect international humanitarian law, ensure the protection of civilians, and facilitate the safe and unhindered delivery of aid. And a reminder that the $2.6 billion humanitarian response plan is only 33% funded at the moment. And staying in the country, our human rights colleagues there have issued today their latest update covering the first 6 months of the year. Basically, it says that between January and June, they have documented 2,355 human rights violations that affected over 6,300 people. This, they say, represents a 15% increase in the numbers of people impacted by human rights violations. Armed groups were found responsible for nearly 3 out of 4 violations documented. and the full report is available online. Turning to Ukraine, the outgoing humanitarian coordinator there, Denise Brown, has condemned a deadly attack that killed and injured dozens of civilians in the eastern town, and bear with me, of Kostiantynivka in the Donetsk region just hours ago. In a statement, Ms. Brown said civilians are paying the highest price for the war and underscored that we must not allow this to be normalized. OCHA says that escalating attacks in both the Donetsk and Sumy regions over the past 2 days have killed and injured civilians there and damaged the infrastructure that they rely on. And increasing attacks in the Donetsk region are deepening the needs of some 60,000 people in impacted communities. The towns of Mirnorod, Pokrovsk, and Toretsk have endured repeated strikes since early August, causing casualties and damage to homes, schools, and health facilities, as well as the displacement of nearly 5,000 people. Our humanitarian colleagues also tell us that despite the risks, many civilians, especially older people, are reluctant to leave, and they are struggling to meet their basic needs at a time when ongoing hostilities are making humanitarian access more difficult. In the face of these challenges, aid workers continue to assist those most affected in the Donetsk region and those who have fled, including by providing food, hygiene supplies, school materials, cash assistance, and legal and psychological support. And on a related note, as you noticed, I said outgoing resident coordinator Denise Brown. So the Secretary General has appointed Matthias Schmale of Germany as the new resident and humanitarian coordinator in Ukraine. With the host government's approval, he will start his work on 11th of August. Mr. Schmale succeeds Ms. Brown, to whom the Secretary General is grateful for her dedicated service. And he brings more than 30 years of experience in humanitarian and development work. He has served as senior advisor to the UN Development Coordination's Office, Regional Team for Africa, and several positions with UNRWA, the International Red Cross and Red Crescent Movement, and NGOs at a global, regional, and country level. And there's much more information on his bio online. And I have a statement issued today by the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, which said it is monitoring attacks and threats against journalists. The agency noted that in recent months, multiple journalists covering protests in different parts of the world have been subjected to various forms of attacks, including killings, injuries, arbitrary detentions, and confiscation of their equipment, while exercising their rightful duties as journalists. UNESCO recalls that all authorities concerned have the duty and responsibility to ensure the safety of journalists covering protests around the world in accordance with international norms and human rights obligations. And finally, today is the International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. In a message for the day, the Secretary General says that Indigenous peoples are the keepers of knowledge and traditions that help safeguard some of the most biodiverse areas of our planet. And as guardians of the environment, their survival is our survival. On Sunday, it's World Steel Pan Day. Steel pan, if you do not know, is a musical instrument originating in Trinidad and Tobago, and it possesses cultural and historical significance. And that is it for me, so I will now turn to questions. I will start with Gabriel.
Thank you, Florencia. The U.S., Egypt, and Qatar have proposed ceasefire talks either in Doha or Cairo for August 15th. As the Secretary General, has he been briefed on this, and what's his general stance on this? And will there be any UN participation that you know of?
Yes, we are aware of the developments. As of now, I'm not aware of any participation. But of course, I think any movement that gets the parties closer to a ceasefire is very welcome by us. Obviously, we've been talking about it for months and months, and anything working towards that end is very much welcomed.
And how critical are these talks at this moment, does the Secretary General believe?
Honestly, I think that talks have been critical this entire time. We've been calling for talks and negotiations over escalation. And I think that the current humanitarian situation, the one that I just read, makes it even more critical. People have been displaced many times now. We have said repeatedly there is no safe place in Gaza. And talks really are, we believe, the only way forward. Nothing else nothing else has worked, and we hope that a ceasefire is the first step.
And in southern Lebanon, there's been several Israeli attacks over the last 24 hours in towns in southern Lebanon. How worried is the Secretary General that that's escalating an already tense situation along that line?
Well, he's also been very clear about this. We've been warning about the regional escalation. We've been seeing it happen slowly, sometimes not that slowly. And I think it's still a concern. And we, of course, call for the de-escalation and expansion territorially of this conflict.
Can I do one more?
Yes, of course.
Thanks. Switching to Russia and Ukraine, I noticed that the Secretary General condemned the attacks in Donetsk, but his office has been very quiet when we've asked him the last few days about Ukraine's incursion into Russian territory in the Kursk region. You've said that you were waiting for more information. It's now going on 5 days. What is the UN's position on the fact that Ukraine is sending in troops into Russian territory?
I think, as we've been saying, we're closely monitoring the developments. I think while we gather this information, it might not be as quick as you would like, but at the same time, we don't have a ground presence there to verify this. We reiterate our call for all concerned to act responsibly and ensure the protection of civilians. And we just further reiterate the Secretary General's calls on all parties to prevent further escalation. Deji.
Yeah, boxer Cindy Nagamba became the first refugee Olympic team athletes who won a medal in the Olympics. What message does the Secretary General have for Ms. Nagamba?
I think our message is one of first of all, extremely proud of these extraordinary efforts. I think it's just another example of how refugees, if given the chance, they're extremely resilient. They're extremely talented and hardworking, and these are people just like us that they just had this extraordinary circumstances. But even under extraordinary circumstances, they have dedicated themselves to this one goal, and it paid off. And of course, for us, it's a source of pride, as of course we are all at the UN. All of us are team refugees. So a very heartfelt congratulations.
And may I have another question? Since you're talking about the Nagasaki peace ceremony, I noticed that in the message that the USG Nakamitsu delivered on behalf of the Secretary General, she did not mention anything about why this tragedy happened in Nagasaki,
Right.
as well as Hiroshima.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I think, honestly, looking back, this is
as a Chinese, I feel like I'm quite entitled to ask this question, right?
You are entitled to ask any question you want, Deji. And I will answer as I see fit. Basically, I think it is a historical event that what we focus on, obviously, as the UN, is the insane impact it had on the lives that were lost, the many, many lives that were lost. And also, our focus today is on preventing this from happening again. I think that you can look into the reasons. This is not for me to debate, but for historians to debate. Of course, we know there are all these arguments of why this happened, how it happened. But for us, I think our main focus is on ensuring that it does not happen again. And I think this is why, and especially I think the message focused a lot on, we think this is a thing of the past, but it is not. And we are seeing it everywhere. We are seeing talks of biological weapons, nuclear weapons, escalations. And I think for us, we focus more on the forward, on the future, and on the prevention and disarmament. Yep. Yes, please. I don't know your name, but I know you're from AP.
Yeah, my name is Jade Lozada. My question is if you have any comment on the cybersecurity bill that just passed the committee level.
Yes. I don't know if you have seen the, and I have it somewhere in here. I don't know if you have seen, but I think we had a press release on this. 1 second. So it's, as you know, it is a draft convention, and it is expected to be adopted by the GA later this year. It would be the first global legally binding instrument on cybercrime. I mean, it represents. It's the result of a 5-year effort by UN member states with the input of civil society, academic institutions, and the private sector. So, this was very much a UN member state-led effort. And so we'll let member states speak to that. But I think it's good. We welcome the fact that they were able to pass this convention, this draft convention, and we'll see what happens at the GA. And if you want a little bit more information on it, I can also give it to you after. Any other questions? No? Great. Happy Friday, and Farhan will be with you on Monday. Thank you.
Please, we have a question online, please.
Before I go, yes, please, I'm sorry. Is it Mushifik? Hi, Mushifik.
Yes.
Tell
Hi,
me.
how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. How does the Secretary General view Bangladesh's new interim government led by Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus, which took office the day before yesterday following the fall of Sheikh Hasina's regime?
I believe you asked this about Farhan to Farhan yesterday. I really have nothing else to add. I mean, what we welcome is the fact that there seems to be an inclusive process for forming a government. And, of course, we hope that continues. And also, of course, we welcome any signs that there is a lessening of violence and more restraint in the country. But I don't have anything else further to add. I believe there's someone else. Kareem?
Okay, so next up we're going to hear from the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, as he vows that the Conservative government would protect jobs by matching U.S. tariffs on Chinese-produced electric vehicles and EV components, including steel and aluminum. The announcement takes place in Hamilton, Ontario, and at the city's Stelco steel plant. He is actually has a backdrop. If you can actually find any video of this on YouTube, he has a backdrop of proposed steel workers who are applauding him. So the question is this more rhetoric from the Conservative government as opposed to rhetoric from the NDP or the Liberals? The fact of the matter still remains that all the parties seem to be out of touch with what is going on with people, and the fact that we have high inflation, the fact that the cost for a rental is like, in this area, there is an area called Kitsilano that isn't too far away from where I'm broadcasting from, and for a 500 square foot apartment that they want almost $3,000 a month for it, and that's considered to be affordable. something is definitely not right with government when things like that are being labeled affordable when there's not much of a chance that the average family can afford that. And that's what is affordable to Canada. What can the average family afford? So let's listen to what Mr. Poilievre had to say as he appeared from Hamilton, Ontario, talking about tariffs against China.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Est-ce que tout le monde peut m'entendre? Merci beaucoup Stelco. Surtout, merci à nos travailleurs, les meilleurs travailleurs au monde. Ça me fait plaisir d'être ici, à l'usine la plus âgée au pays pour la production d'acier, avec les meilleurs travailleurs dans le monde. Ça fait 115 ans depuis cette usine est ici, où les travailleurs produisent les meilleurs produits d'acier au monde pour gagner des chèques de paie afin de nourrir leur famille. Et le rêve de Canada, pendant ces années, 115 années, était de venir ici, travailler fort, gagner un gros chèque de paie qui était suffisant pour nourrir une famille et supporter une communauté. Mais après 9 ans de Justin Trudeau, que le Bloc garde au pouvoir, ce rêve devient un cauchemar. L'inflation est le pire que depuis 40 ans. Le travail ne paie plus. Les travailleurs gagnent l'argent. Trudeau taxe l'argent. Le coût de logement a doublé. Ici à Hamilton, ça a triplé. La criminalité, le chaos est présent dans nos rues. Et le Bloc garde Justin Trudeau au pouvoir pour supporter toutes ces politiques de taxes, d'impôts, d'endettement et d'impression d'argent qui a causé ce misère. Encore pire, nous perdons nos emplois. Aujourd'hui, on apprend qu'on a perdu 2800 emplois en même temps que notre population augmente d'à peu près 100 000 personnes par mois. Le taux de participation dans notre marché de travail est le plus bas depuis 26 ans. Un bilan épouvantable pour nos travailleurs. M. Trudeau, avec l'aide des bloquistes, a permis l'exportation de nos emplois. Il favorise les dictatures étrangères en supportant des politiques qui tuent des emplois ici au Canada. Il bloque les produits de gaz naturel, des projets forestiers et des mines, forçant les Canadiens et d'autres pays d'acheter des produits de la Chine, de la Russie, de l'Iran, de la Venezuela, qui prend davantage du marché que nous vidons. Trudeau a dit qu'il admire la dictature communiste de base de la Chine et il continue de reconnaître la dictature communiste au Venezuela. Le résultat de cette approche, c'est que la classe moyenne ici au Canada devient de pire en pire, de plus en plus pauvre. Aux États-Unis, ils ont pris plus de 400 milliards de dollars de notre investissement depuis que Justin Trudeau est arrivé au pouvoir. Maintenant, l'OCDE affirme que nous avons le pire économie parmi tous ces presque 40 pays. Mais maintenant, M. Trudeau veut quadrupler la taxe carbone qui va tuer des emplois dans cette usine. Et aujourd'hui, M. Trudeau met en péril des centaines de milliers d'emplois dans le secteur de l'acier, de l'aluminium, de l'exploitation minière de la construction automobile en permettant à Pékin d'inonder nos marchés de véhicules électriques et d'autres produits fabriqués en Chine à des prix artificiellement bas, alors que notre principal partenaire commercial a appliqué des droits de douane pour maintenir les emplois aux États-Unis. Maintenant, le Parti communiste de Pékin exploite la faiblesse de ces normes en matière de travail, de l'environnement, pour produire de l'acier, de l'aluminium, des véhicules électriques artificiellement bon marché, qui sont bien plus polluants. Il a également volé des technologies aux pays occidentaux, y compris le Canada, pour limiter nos potentiels au marché international. Justin Trudeau n'a pas réussi à protéger nos travailleurs. Et c'est pour ça que nous perdons des emplois aujourd'hui. Il a refusé d'emboîter le pas aux États-Unis en s'alignant sur leurs droits de douane sur les véhicules électriques fabriqués en Chine. Les États-Unis ont commencé à introduire des droits de douane pour contrer ce phénomène il y a 6 ans, ce qui a eu l'effet de bloquer les voitures électriques provenant de la Chine aux États-Unis. Mais rien ici au Canada. M. Trudeau, en fait, il fait le contraire. Il donne des rabais pour acheter des voitures électriques faites en Chine, en même temps que M. Trudeau met les taxes sur la production d'acier, d'aluminium, des automobiles produits ici au Canada. Il donne un rabais pour subventionner l'achat des voitures faites en Chine. C'est ridicule, ça n'a pas de bon sens. La solution, les travailleurs canadiens sont les meilleurs au monde. Ils devraient pouvoir gagner des plus grands chèques de paie. Et c'est pour ça qu'aujourd'hui, les conservateurs de gros bon sens revendiquent des tariffs et des autres pénalités pour l'importation des produits provenant de la Chine. Nous proposons des droits de douane de 100% sur les VE fabriqués en Chine et entrant au Canada. 2. Instaurer les droits de douane de 50% sur les semi-conducteurs et les cellules solaires. 3. Instaurer des droits de douane de 25% sur les produits en acier et en aluminium, le graphite et d'autres minéraux essentiels. Les batteries cellulaires, des pièces de batterie, le graphite, les aimants pertinents et les grues de navires à quai. De veiller à ce qu'il n'y a pas de rabais pour des EV produits en Chine. Un gouvernement conservateur va aussi abroger la loi C-69 pour la remplacer avec une nouvelle loi qui va permettre la production de nos ressources ici au Canada. Nous allons éliminer les taxes et couper les impôts pour nos investisseurs, nos travailleurs, afin de ramener la production ici au Canada. C'est ça le but. Nous voulons que les travailleurs ici au Canada aient ces emplois, avec des chèques de paie plus grands, qui achètent de nourriture, de logement et de l'essence dans des communautés sécuritaires. Regarde les produits ici. Nous voulons ces produits ici, produits par les travailleurs de Canada, par notre monde. Nous voulons les emplois pour nos travailleurs, sur notre terre, sous notre drapeau. C'est ça, ramener le gros bon sens chez nous. Merci. Thank you. Now in English. Thank you very much to the great workers of Stelco, the great workers of our oldest steel plant. Here they are. The greatest workers in the world in this 115-year-old plant. 4 generations, over a century. Workers from around the world came to call Canada home. And when they arrived in Hamilton, they were given a chance to work making steel. Now, all these years later, these workers continue to galvanize and cool roll that steel. They bring it to the market in countless different products that Canadians take for granted. They built this city. They built the hammer with their hard work. They are the backbone of our nation. We used to have a promise in Canada. Here was the deal. Hard work got you a powerful paycheck that bought an affordable home and food in safe neighborhoods. That deal, like everything else after 9 years of Justin Trudeau, is broken. Inflation is at a 40-year high. Housing costs have doubled nationwide and tripled in Hamilton. It's now impossible for your standard manufacturing job to pay enough to buy a home in most major markets. Housing costs have risen faster in the last 9 years in Canada than in any other G7 country, and they're almost twice as high as in the neighboring United States towns. Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder are rampant in our streets. And you would think that the NDP would be outraged by this. They used to stand up for the working men and women. But nope, they've signed on. Jagmeet Singh is delaying the election until next year when he qualifies for a pension. $2.2 million, paid for by these hardworking people. Sell-out Singh has betrayed these workers. He gets his pension, Trudeau gets power, these workers get the bill. Now, Trudeau's policies have gotten even worse. He's bringing in a 61 cent a litre carbon tax. That will add up to $300 million in costs for this plant alone, bleeding more of our jobs and paychecks to other countries around the world. As a result, Canada's middle class is now far poorer than the United States. We have the slowest growing economy in the OECD. Our economy has shrunk more than any other G7 country, most of which have actually grown. The carbon tax is killing $25 billion a year of wages and other benefits for families. And he's blocking resource projects, so oil, gas, and mining production go to dirty dictatorships rather than coming here to Canada. Meanwhile, the Communist Party in Beijing, which Justin Trudeau says he admires so much, is exploiting weak labor and environmental standards to produce artificially cheap steel, aluminum, and EVs that create more pollution. They have stolen technology from Western countries, limited access to global supply chains, and have massively subsidized steel, aluminum, and EV industries. They're doing this with the goal of crushing our steel, our aluminum, and our automotive production and taking our jobs away. Trudeau has failed to protect our workers against this economic predation. In fact, he's refused to match U.S. tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. The U.S. first introduced tariffs to counteract Chinese-made vehicles years ago, and other tariffs have now been in place for 6 years. Meanwhile, Trudeau has done nothing to protect our workers and our jobs. Worse than that, this is where it gets really crazy. He's giving out rebates for people to buy Chinese-made cars. So let's get this straight. Justin Trudeau and sellout Singh want to give taxpayer-funded subsidies for buying Chinese-made cars while they impose tax penalties on the manufacturing of Canadian-made cars. No wonder hundreds of billions of dollars have left our country and are creating jobs in other countries. Canada's workers are the best in the world. They deserve powerful paychecks and a prime minister who will protect them. Rather than allowing authoritarian overseas governments to steal our jobs with their low labor standards and poor environmental policies, we're going to bring home those paychecks to Canada. Bring home our jobs. Thank you. And that is why common sense conservatives are calling for the introduction of a 100% tariff on made-in-China EVs entering Canada. 2, a 50% tariff on semiconductors and solar cells. 3, a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, graphite, and other critical minerals, EV batteries, battery parts, permanent magnets, and ship-to-shore cranes. And 4, the cancellation of taxpayer-funded rebates for Chinese-made vehicles. A common-sense conservative government will also repeal C-69, the anti-resource law, and replace it with a new law that, yes, protects the environment and consults First Nations, but also gets projects approved so that we can dig the mines, build the pipelines, produce the clean Canadian natural gas, and turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. Bring it home. Within 60 days of becoming Prime Minister, I will launch a tax reform task force to design for me a bring it home tax cut. That will be a tax cut on work, investment, and making stuff in Canada. We want this to be the best place in the world to invest in a new steel mill, dig a new mine, hire another worker. We will bring home powerful paychecks and production to this country. Very simply, when you look around here at this amazing coiled steel, the best products in the world, we want these products made by our workers on our land under our flag. That is what it means to bring it home. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We'll now have time for questions from the floor.
Oh, sorry. Hi, good morning. Simone Gavros with CHCH News. My question is related to safety in the city. The Tax Court of Canada in downtown Hamilton recently closed, and they were citing gun violence safety in the city there. My question is, what's your reaction to this, and what are Conservative MPs doing to address gun violence in cities similar to Hamilton?
Thank you for an excellent question. It's really tragic that our once safe cities have been taken over by crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. Trudeau and the NDP have brought in catch-and-release criminal justice policies that allow the same repeat violent gun criminals to be released within hours of their arrest to do the same crime all over again. Trudeau has failed to protect our borders against gun smugglers, and that's why the guns keep coming in. Licensed, law-abiding, trained and tested hunters and sport shooters are not the problem. The problem is the criminals. So common sense Conservatives will repeal the NDP Liberal catch and release criminal justice policy and bring jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders. We will secure the borders to stop smuggling of firearms, and we will pay for it by ending the insane confiscation of hunting rifles. Justin Trudeau blames Grandpa Joe's hunting rifle. I know Grandpa Joe is not the problem. The problem is the criminals we need to lock up and the smugglers we need to block. I want to protect Canadians from criminals. He wants to protect turkeys from hunters. You decide which one makes most sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Good morning, Mr. Poilievre. David Menzies with Rebel News. Staying with the theme of bringing home our jobs, the unemployment rate for young people aged 15 to 24 has jumped in the past year from 10.6% to 13.5%. That's nearly an increase of 3% in just 1 year. There are 422,000 young people unemployed. And yet the Trudeau Liberals have brought in more than 750,000 temporary workers. And these workers are taking the jobs that normally young Canadians would start out with, fast food jobs, convenience store jobs, etc. Why are we bringing in cheap foreign workers to undercut young Canadians just so that massive corporations like Tim Hortons can save a few bucks an hour? And what would a Conservative government do to reverse this trend?
Thank you very much. Look, Trudeau's destroyed our entire immigration system, and he has expanded the temporary foreign worker program by well over 200% at a time when we're losing jobs. When I was responsible for that program in 2015, we had only 60,000 temporary foreign workers. Now it's close to 200,000, and on top of that, you have international students who are effectively temporary foreign workers that came under the wrong stream. Our temporary foreign worker program should only be available to fill jobs that employers have proven beyond a doubt cannot be filled by Canadians. It should never be used to bring in low-wage workers from poor countries to take jobs away from or suppress the wages of Canadian workers. I challenge Canadian business to hire Canadian workers first, and I challenge the government to end the chaos in the temporary foreign worker program, bring the numbers down, and allow Canadians to get good, solid paying jobs that will give them enough money to buy an affordable home and food in safe neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Bonjour Monsieur Poilievre, Jessica Chen pour Radio-Canada. Ma question concerne les tensions au Moyen-Orient. Cela fait un moment que le gouvernement fédéral demande aux Canadiens de quitter le Liban, mais aucun plan d'évacuation d'urgence n'a été mis en place. Alors, est-ce que, selon vous, la réponse canadienne est suffisante? Et sinon, qu'est-ce que le gouvernement devrait faire de plus? Merci.
Ça montre encore l'incompétence de ce gouvernement. La réalité, c'est que Israël essaie de se défendre contre l'agression d'Hezbollah, d'Hamas et surtout de Téhéran. Les terroristes continuent d'attaquer Israël, causant une instabilité. Nous devrions contrer les terroristes, mettre en place des sanctions sévères contre l'Iran pour punir des chefs et des terroristes là-bas. Nos forces policières devraient arrêter tous les gens qui s'impliquent dans le groupe terroriste iranien qui vient d'être banni ici au Canada. Et nous devrions aussi protéger le Canada contre les menaces terroristes qui malheureusement augmentent à travers le monde maintenant. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Next question.
Sorry. Oh, do I hold it? Okay. Hi. Sorry. I'm Kara. I'm from Flamborough today. I guess more jobs, bringing jobs home, that's one part of the puzzle. The cost of living is extremely high. I think everybody behind you can probably attest to that. What is the plan, I guess, when it comes to the grocery store, when it comes to the cost of rent, that sort of thing? Is there something you have in mind? Thank you.
Thank you. Terrific question. You're right. After 9 years of Trudeau, everything costs more. Work doesn't pay. Housing costs have literally doubled. Here in Hamilton, they have tripled. My common sense plan is to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. We will axe the carbon tax to lower the cost of gas, heat, and grocery bills, and to make Stelco competitive so that it doesn't have to lay off these workers. Trudeau's carbon tax will probably shut down this steel plant if he goes ahead with the increases that he's promised, while continuing to bring in cheap, subsidized steel from China. Second, we need to fix the budget. By capping government spending and cutting government waste, we can bring down debt, inflation, and interest rates. And finally, we need to build the homes. I will require municipalities free up land, speed up permits, and cut building taxes as a condition of getting their federal funding, with the goal of building 15% more homes per year. The reason housing is unaffordable? We don't have enough homes. We have the fewest homes per capita in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. That's because of our horrendous bureaucracy. I will require local governments clear the bureaucracy to build 15% more per year. We'll sell off 6,000 federal buildings, thousands of acres of federal land to build, build, build. And we'll back the trades because we need boots, not suits, to build the homes of the future. Get our kids in the trades right out of high school and make sure that training money goes to them. Give tax fairness for traveling trades workers who are building those affordable homes. That is how we will make it possible for people to earn a powerful paycheck that buys affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods. Thank you.
In French.
Merci beaucoup. Notre plan de gros bon sens, c'est-à-dire de couper taxes et impôts, bâtir des logements, repérer le budget et stopper les crimes. On va couper la taxe carbone et les impôts pour rendre le travail payant encore. Nous allons bâtir des logements en insistant que les municipalités enlèvent la bureaucratie pour permettre la construction de plus de 15% d'augmentation par année. 15% plus de construction chaque année. Et troisièmement, nous allons réparer le budget en plafonnant les dépenses pour réduire les déficits, l'inflation et les taux d'intérêt. Le but, c'est encore d'avoir un pays où le travail fort vous donne un grand chèque de paie qui achète de nourriture, de logement et de l'essence abordable dans des communautés sécuritaires.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This will be the final question.
Good morning, sir. Global News. My question is to do with a terror attack plotted in Toronto. And one of the two men charged with plotting the terror attack in Toronto, he came to Canada from abroad and became a citizen after he's alleged to have appeared in an ISIS video dismembering a prisoner of ISIS. Would you dedicate more resources to security screening in the immigration and citizenship system?
Yes. Justin Trudeau spends our resources trying to ban plastic straws and hunting rifles while he opens our borders up to potential terrorists and other security risks. We have, in this case, an alleged ISIS terrorist who seems to have appeared in a video mutilating another human being, cutting another human being to pieces on a crucifix in the Middle East. And then this person who allegedly did this act was granted access to this country and has been newly charged with another alleged terrorist offense on our soil. Justin Trudeau is not worth the risk and the danger. His radical, reckless policies are putting Canadian lives at risk. A Poilievre-led, common-sense Conservative government will secure our borders to keep the terrorists out and keep our nation strong and free. Thank you very much.
Okay, so why don't we wrap this up with some final thoughts here? As we know, in the United States are coming up for election, and not to follow too much after that election, that we're going to see Canada heading into an election, which case there's still a lot of controversy around. Is Mr. Trudeau going to continue as leader of the Liberal Party, or is he going to step away and somebody else is going to step in his place, which no one is seeming to want to step up to the plate? But we did see a similar situation to that with the NDP government here in British Columbia, then all of a sudden David Eby appeared to be uncontested, and I say appeared to be uncontested because there was some controversy around somebody else who did want to run for the leadership of the NDP BC NDP party, but they were immediately disqualified because they accepted funding from what was to be determined to be a unreputable source of funding, and David Eby was placed into the leadership position without a real election. Are we going to see something like that happen as Mr. Trudeau steps away? All of a sudden somebody appears, and then the Liberals again get to continue their government, as maybe the whole Liberal thing, we need a change. Maybe we need some sort of change. Maybe we need a national NDP change. Who knows what it is? I'm not advocating for one party or the other. I'm just saying that we need to all make sure we get out there and vote and make sure that our voices are heard at the polls so that we can see the changes in our society that we really want. Thank you for listening to Policy and Rates today. I've been your host, Michael Clogs, and find that subscribe button wherever it is and toss us some support if you can, so that we can continue broadcasting about human rights, government policy, and how those two things either come together or they repel each other. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.